Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hi, hello, vanakkam, and welcome to Little Law YouTube channel. And this is me, Yovasan Shanmugam. In this video, we are going to see about the SQL select statement. So before we move on to the SQL select statement, it's just a quick recap. So in our previous videos, we saw about what is a SQL and how to create a table and what are the constraints we have in the tables. And we also saw about the insert into the tables, inserting the values into the tables with various constraints. So follow to it. Today we are going to see about select, the SQL select statement. So what does the SQL select statement does, or what is the use of this SQL select statement? So this select statement is used to select or retrieve data from one or more tables. And we can use this statement to retrieve all the rows from the table in one go, or we can retrieve only those rows that satisfies a certain condition or a combination of conditions. Okay, so we have seen what is the use of select statement. So let's see the syntax of select statement. So the syntax of select statement is select the column name 1 and the column name 2 from the table name, and this is the syntax. So what we are doing is we are selecting the column names from the table name, and that is the syntax. So the column name 1 and the column name 2 and so forth, any column names are the names of the columns or fields of a database table where the values we want to fetch. So for example, we have the customers table, and the customer ID is a column name, the first name is a column name, last name, age, and the country are the column names from the table name customers. So first, let's fetch all the values. So as we already mentioned, so for that, select all the values in one go. How to do it? So select star. So what is this star? So star stands for collecting all the data, which means all the columns from table name, and the table name is customers. Let's run the query and see what happens. So I'm running the SQL, and here in the results section we can see we have we have extracted all the values in the customers table, and that is how the select star works. So this select star returns all the rows and columns. It not only fetches all the columns, but it also fetches all the rows, or it returns all the rows from the table. So what if there is a scenario where we want to fetch only a particular column? We don't want all the data, we want just a specific column. So selecting specific column. So how to do it? So to do that, let's write select and the column name. So let's now move on to the orders table. So let's fetch the values from this order table. So what are we going to fetch? So let's fetch the order ID and the amount. So we have to have a comma between the column names. So what we are doing is we are selecting the order ID and the amount. So for each order, what is the amount? And it has to be from the table name. So the table name is orders. And let's run the query and see what we fetch. And here we can see that we have fetched only two columns, only the specific columns, which is the order ID and then the amount from the table orders. And we have got it here. So order ID and the amount values. So there is one more example which we will see now. So now there is a different requirement, that is you are supposed to select the specific columns but with a different name. We can't change the name of the columns in the table, but how to display or how to return the values in a different name, the column name. Say for example, we want to display the order ID as the order number and the amount as total amount spent. So how to display this? We can't, for this change, we can't change the column name because that will be mapped with different table names and different columns, and there can be a foreign key. So changing the names here inside the table will bring a lot of confusion. So how to achieve this? So we have to select specific columns but with a different name to display. So how to do that? So for that, let's enter the same command for the specific columns, which is select order ID as order number, comma, amount as total money spent. From the table name is orders. Let's execute the query and see how does it work. So here we can see the order ID is displayed as order number, and here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The same is displayed in the orders table under order ID, and then we have got the amount as total money spent. So there is one catch here. We have to make sure that we do not have any spaces between the values that we want to display. Even we want to display it, we have to fill this with values. So let me just run it and show it for you. So here we can see that this is actually a syntax error. So either it has to be a single character, a variable, otherwise we have to have some connector variables between it. So make sure that we do not have any spaces between the variables that we declare here. When we run the SQL, we automatically could see the values displayed while selecting the specific columns. So now let's add a little complex in this select. Don't worry, it's not too complex, but it's a measure where which will actually help us in returning or in bringing in more values. So this one is called select distinct. So what is select distinct? So select distinct statement is used to return only the distinct or different values when we fetch the values from the table. So inside a table, we have a column which often contains many duplicate values. It's not duplicate values, but it's something like in the customers table, we could see the country where people from different countries, but still there are people in the same country, like two people, John and Robert are from US, and David and John are from UK, and Betty is from UAE. So what we want to do is like we want to display different values, which we mentioned here as distinct values. So what is the syntax for distinct? So it is same like what we do for selecting the values, but before the column name, we have to bring distinct and then the column 1 and then the column name 2 from table name. So this is the only difference. So what is the only difference is we add distinct in front of the column name. So immediately next after the select statement, we add this distinct so that we can bring the value. So what we'll do is like we will try this now. So select distinct. So before that, let's try this one. So select the column name, which is the customer ID, and then the first name, the last name, age, country from the table name, which is customers. Let's run the query. So here we can see all 5 rows are getting displayed. So let's now try the same query, but with adding distinct. Let's add distinct in front of the columns or next to the select statement. And when we click run SQL, so the reason we get all the values in the table or in the result is we do not have anything common or any columns common in all the variables. So let's narrow it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm removing this customer ID. I still have the first name. I'm removing this last name and the age. So I have only two values. So I have the first name and the country. But before that, let me remove this distinct, and I'm running the script again. And here we are seeing that we have the first name and the country. So what I'm going to do is let me copy this query, and I'm bringing in distinct now, since I could find some values which are common. So let's try this and see how does it work. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to select the distinct values which are common in the first name and the country, and let's run the SQL. And again, here we do not have any values common. So let me remove the first name again, and now we have only the country. So what I'm doing is I'm selecting distinct country from customers, and before that, let me select only the countries from the customers table, and I'm running it. And here we can see we have 5 rows for the column name country, and let's comment it, and you bring the distinct in between the select and the column name country. I'm running the SQL, and here we can see, so previously it is 5 rows and now it is 3. So the reason is we have USA, UK and UAE, which is unique or which is distinct. So it is displayed only once, since it does not bring the duplication, and that is how the distinct works. So let's add few more options to it. So what I'm going to do is let us do a workaround. So let me add count of star as distinct countries from the table name customers, where the value is going to be the country. And let's now run this and see how many number of distinct countries we have in the table. So it actually is 3, and let's confirm it. So okay, I have missed a select statement here. So what I'm doing is I'm selecting the countries here, and that countries is being counted, and we are going to display the count of the distinct countries in this query. So here we can see clearly that we have 3 countries, distinct countries from the customers table, and here we have count those values in here. So we have got this value. So in case if we want to, or if we have a business requirement where we have to get the distinct value, the number of distinct values, so we can use this queries where we are counting the values as distinct countries. So here we can see the distinct countries, and that's the reason of having the distinct countries in this query as distinct countries from the query, and this is the query, and from this query, and that number is 3. So with that, we come to an end, and I believe this video would have been very useful to you. And until we meet you in another interesting session, it's bye-bye from Vasant Shanmugam and Little's Law.